remember when we were in, do you remember the back room? Yeah. Not in the dining room. Yes, that's monster. We called options monster. This is our 10th anniversary of the last time we all assembled. Some of us actually forgot we'd been here 10 years ago. We're all slightly mixed up, we're all slightly older, we're still here, that's the important thing. One or two books have been sold and moved on, but we've all had happy memories. I think everybody's met everybody now. I think everybody's knows everybody on the table. John Welling, of course, and David Hughes, Robert Law. I must introduce Robert. Didn't actually go on the Ark, but would have gone on the Ark.
Yes.
With Truda. With Robert Fellows. Robert Fellows is a person that I personally owe a lot to, because Robert very kindly went ahead of us wherever we went. He produced charts and everything, went to the Baltic and so on. And Robert, who sadly is deceased, an amazing guy, had got cancer in his eye, had an operation, found out on a Wednesday, went to hospital on a Thursday, operated on a Friday. Saturday recovered, ran me up on Saturday evening, would I drive him to the Cruising Association on a Monday to give a lecture, and there he is, his eye missing, and he did. Anyway, sadly his yacht might be sold, but he's with us in spirit. Anyway, we've got a bit of the art history here, so to remind you, we were 224, you've probably still got all your numbers in various shapes and sizes. We've all got, we've all got funny memories of the Ark. I mean, we're crossing with David was on the first leg, and on our boat we had our doctor Jim Reeves. Jim is actually sailing with his wife Ty at this very minute to the Caribbean on a yacht with 200 people on board. So he's moved up a degree and it's slightly larger. Our son Philip was on our boat, as you probably remember, and we spoke to him last night, but he's got to go to work. Our daughter, who was on the leg too, where we had a sort of hiccup with leaking anchor chambers, she's working today and had to go off to Newmarket, so she sends her wishes to be here too. I think that we've got all the crew from the return. So what we're all complete, you're half complete, you're nearly all complete. So we're all here, and John's here, and that's the most important. Thank you to David for coming all the way down from Scotland. Thank you to John for coming from the auctions.
Can't see where the bears come from.
The menu's on the table. Choose whichever one. Stu is very kindly typed it up. What we'll do is... Sorry? Two courses, yeah. What we'll do is we'll divide the total cost of the drink and the food by 13 afterwards and invite you either to pay directly to the bar, probably easy by credit card. So that's the answer to that. And then perhaps at some point, once we've settled down, we can give a rough brief, various boxes give a brief description of what we've been up to, inform us what we're doing. Not everything. Have you got your canal book? That was a big question. So anyway, welcome, great to have you all here.
G'day guys.
G'day,
Now that all the background noise is gone, is there anyone who would like to say a few little words? I know John would. Oh, come on,
A
John.
delight to be here again. Wonderful to be in such good company, and thanks for all your wonderful videos over the years. They cheered me up wonderfully this year, and I haven't been able to go to see you.
Well done.
So when were you last at sea, John?
July. I did the
You were going to sail around Ireland. One of your plans.
What, July this year?
Yes. Worked with a strong crew.
Yeah.
That's delivery from Chichester via wherever you wanted to go, to St Marlow.
And you had good weather, of course.
Well, I do apologise, incidentally. I've got no song sheets today.
My solicitor would like to talk to you before anything goes on YouTube. We'll be in contact.
The sun came out, the cliffs were there, and we thought,
Sorry, I will edit anything that you shouldn't say. But Robert, have you got anything to say for us? You've always got a few words, Robert.
Is that the Chukovar has gone across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad to be here and chat away of things I didn't know about and the rest of it. It's a great lunch.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Robert. Watch what you say.
No discretion. He done it before. He just straight on.
It's the needles. Look at speed.
He also knew.
Well, I'm actually going to get in this video.
Anybody who's going to hit anything. So we're just straight like that.
I got in the video.
Bite, move, take another bite.
Yeah, that's the next one. Moving the plates, we stay where we are.
Are you happy with that, Sue? Are you happy with that, Sue?
You can't help some people, can you?
How's yours? Okay.
I hope you're not as picky about eating on the boat.
Robert, do I understand from your post you've gotten into fleet management on 2 boats?
Best thing invented, non-slip natting.
Does it say record?
Yeah.
What you got to remember?
So exactly where were you Thursday night at 2 o'clock?
You've got to remember that I can always cut, this video. Well, I like the question, but I'd like to answer that
And more
actually.
to the point, who were you with?
Was that
Why haven't you answered the question yet?
no, I can tell you where I was at 2:30.
Oh, yeah?
I was in the dentist at 2:30.
AM.
No.
2:30.
AM.
Oh, AM.
Somebody's trying to spotlight on him.
He's getting on in bad.
He's getting sweaty. He's very sweaty. He's getting nervous here, I can see.
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm not often under the
So how often do you beat your wife?
Well, I do try, but she always wins. She always, I don't know how, but she always beats me. So I don't do it anymore. This is an indication of whether we enjoyed our meal or not.
Excellent.
all the plates.
There's not a lot left, is there, really?
There's none. I can't see anything left on any of the plates.
The beef was good, very tender. I'd recommend it next time. You had chicken, of course.
That's a different story.
Anyway, Chris has very kindly agreed to say the first one.
That's not what you asked me to talk about.
Before he does, the good news is we're all getting a free pudding. Thanks to Sue's good efforts here as the vice coordinator of 2 balls.
I thought you wanted to know what was just doing since we are.
Well, this is and humorous. Anyway, humorous amuses because this is going on the internet.
Yes, absolutely. Now I heard it's free.
We're all thinking the same thing.
We'll get conversations about this. Anyway, can I hand over to Chris?
Well, very unprepared. We haven't really been doing a lot of exciting sailing since the Ark. We've relocated from Portsmouth Harbour down to Portland Marina, which the exciting thing there was the Olympics of 2012, which was a terrific buzz. Other than that, we've just been sort of tootling around between France and the Scillies and the West Country, and latterly highly engaged with multiple grandchildren. So our long distance cruising has sort of curtailed somewhat, but not to any detriment to our enjoyment, need I say.
But did you have any dramas on the Ark?
We have no dramas, you know, Martin.
No, there was a few incidents coming back quite
what
bad.
do you want? Little
With
anecdotes?
bomb balls.
No, going out was
My
good.
abiding memory of sorry. Can you edit that out?
It'll cost you.
Yes, my abiding. Okay, anecdote. Yes.
Does that cheese?
It's a sort of jolly across.
No sugar.
You just jolly across. And the first week was a jolly. I mean, we had all the sails up and it was all very hunky-dory and everybody go, oh, this is great. You know. And then it sort of increased a bit. And it got quite boisterous, and we ended up down to half a head sail, and there was sort of a compound swell sort of knocking us sideways, quartering us, and you know. And I remember sitting in the middle of the night with a sort of general swell level sort of somewhere up there with my number 2 son, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden the wind gen started to scream alarmingly, which is indicative of a squall sort of very rapidly, and we went, ooh, and we were literally just being surfed down waves. We were doing sort of 13, 14 knots, and the spray and the phosphorescence were coming up sort of about 10 feet at our side. We then got crashed on by a wave which threw one of the life buoys over the side. Number 2 son said, "Are we going to get that?" I said, "No." But that, I mean, it lives in my memory. I mean, it was just like a sleigh ride. There was just sort of phosphorescent shooting at the side. It was just fantastic. There are others, but I can...
Well, that's terrific. Lindsay, come on, you've got some funny stories about your circuit.
Okay,
Oh,
Lindsay, I'm listening.
You sang Happy Birthday to Chris as well on the way back.
Yes.
On our viewer. That was really good. That was lovely.
We tried our best. I think sang maybe a bit of an
No,
understatement.
I
good.
found it very tuneful.
Yes, I don't know what would be the best. I mean, there was lots of little incidents. There was the time going out when, having spent the best part of 4 days dismantling the generator, etc., complete pieces all over the place, diesel everywhere, we put it together, it still didn't work. And lo and behold, somebody said, no names, no factual, "Are you sure the fuse is all right?" And then it worked perfectly.
Keep it simple,
And I've
Stephen.
never talked to him since.
How did you come to be running the radio net? Because you were the control station in our group of folks.
Yes.
When we left the
I don't know, I think I was the last one to sign the list for Army.
Because you then authorised, or you then rang a quiz, which
Oh, yes.
we happened to win because Jim Reeves, who's not here, knew the answer about which particular spice or something, which was talking to some particular...
Could have been, yes. I don't know where we got the quiz from. I don't know who invented the quiz. Who invented the
It was
quiz?
Rob.
It was a great of beer, we're going to create a beer.
So it could have been Rob who invented the quiz,
Yeah.
yes. So the crew on our boat was my son Rich and his mate Rob.
Thank you.
And some of you may remember the beginning, of course. At the beginning of the art was that big party, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And Rob must have been 26 or so. 20,
Young, very young.
quite young. And fancy dress, as you remember. And so he said, "Well, I'm going to go as Tarzan, Skipper." I said, and all that day before the evening, Rob's main problem was whether Tarzan should wear shoes or not. And he finally decided that Tarzan should not wear shoes. So he went to that party barefoot. Very good, very authentic. He did very well. He had lots of partners for dancing and so on. And the skipper and the rest of the crew, being sensible lads, we all went to bed at 11:30, and he and Rich stayed. I got up in the next morning, all ready to go, and I go to the galley, and there in the sink, there's a pair of shorts which I recognise as being Rich's, and they're covered in blood, and it's blood everywhere. So I rushed over to Rich's berth, who was sleeping in the cabin, and never mind his head or his feet, to see what on earth could have happened. But everything was fine, just as I remember it from when he was a baby and the nappies and so on. So, Rich, what's the matter? I said, "It's Rob. Rob's cut his foot." And I nursed his foot in my groin, and that's where all the blood came from. And Rob had indeed cut his foot. And it was about 1.5 miles or something from where the party was. He'd walked back with a broken foot. At that stage, the gate with the barbed wire was locked. So they climbed over the gate and climbed over. Anyway, that was all right. We had a doctor on board, and he'd stitched it up. And the leading foredeck hand for the first half of the crossing was somewhat incapacitated. But apart from that, we all had quite a good time, as I remember, Bob.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Can I just add one anecdote, Martin, to our skipper?
This is the time for all these stories.
I know there was the first night out of the second, but darkness was
It quite
coming.
rough, wasn't it?
Indeed.
Across the starting line.
And as usual, you ask the skipper, you know, what sails do you want for the night? Expecting all white. Unfortunately, we had this rather large thing sticking out the front end of the boat. Lindsay had invested in a parasailer. And this was going to stay up for 20 days. Downwind passage all the way.
Value for money.
Absolutely. I came off watch about 2 o'clock, and this thing was still up there. Just got my ollies off, got into the bunk. All hands, we need to get the kite down. Okay, everything back on, back upstairs, down to the foredeck, head sail light on, everything. Now the good news was this thing had a snuffer on it. Okay, we'll pull the snuffer down. Unfortunately, at the shoulders, where the letterbox stuck out, was quite wide and had a lot of cloth to bring in. Now, it was blowing a good 20 knots, I think, at this stage, Lindsay.
Yeah, maybe.
So this, and the rest. Lindsay was sort of going, 3,000, 3.5 grand, 4 grand. We just about got this snuffer over the shoulders of it, and down it came. But before we actually got it over, Lindsay and I, both of us, fully kitted, wringing wet, probably a good 40 stone. Both of us had our feet off the foredeck. It was a very relieved skipper when that snuffer came over it. I'm glad to say we never saw it again.
Greg, come on, you've got some story. You can delegate these stories to other people if you wish, Greg.
I may do that, but well, I guess a few things. We've still got Eclipse. Eclipse in April we'll have had for 20 years. She still flies an American flag. She still attracts lots of attention from customs. And every year we leave Europe and go to the Channel Islands, which is outside of Europe for tax reasons. And I'm sticking to that story. Turn the camera on. But, I guess a few
I can add to it.
a few things. I didn't tell the crew until we got to England that I'd actually never sailed more than 20 miles offshore in my life. And I get seasick. So I didn't tell them that. But and we joined the ARC late. We had Eclipse for 10 years. I was in the UK. She was in Texas. We were getting work done 5,000 miles away. Lots of things added to a production boat for a cruising, for a long distance cruise. So we had lots of things that actually we finally got working once we got to the UK, which was real helpful. And the one thing I remember, I met most of you in Bermuda because that's where we came up from, Texas and from Florida. And we were next to Lindsay. And, being an engineer, Pinoleum wanted for nothing. And I felt like the plow horse next to all these long distance thoroughbreds. And we were med-docked and anchor out. Of course, our anchor was dragging because we didn't know what to do, and the wind was picking up, so we were hitched to Pinoleum. And it's pitch dark, and it's blowing a hoolie, and he's out there trying to figure things, got a head torch, kind of trying to struggle. And
Tell us a bit about
it. So I thought, okay, he needs a little light. The one piece of equipment we had on Eclipse that he didn't have, we had this giant radar mast on the back with huge floodlights. And I flipped the switch, and there was a moment of satisfaction because I lit up the entire dock. And he looked at me just with this like deer in the headlights look, going, oh, that's helpful. It was the one thing I remember. But I guess the most traumatic thing for me, and some of the other crew that were on there can talk about, I didn't do the whole arc. I got off at Bermuda and skipped that short leg from Bermuda to the Azores because I had to go to work.
14 days.
Yeah, and I was in Russia. I was in Moscow. And I told a couple of you guys at the bar, and it was the most stressful leg for me because I wasn't on board. Did I prep the boat right? Did I get everything right? And I got a phone call at 3 a.m. from the sat phone. Sat bolt upright. Oh my God, what's the problem? What's the problem? Are you sinking? I'm expecting to hear crying, people in the background. They called me because they couldn't figure out how to get the cockpit speakers to work from the stereo. So at £1 a minute, they were calling me to figure out how to do it. Now, tell me.
But that's important, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Could I get back to sleep after that? They also were very unkind in that they hit a whale on that leg. I don't know if you remember that. We had a propeller that was beat back into shape before that. But because Anna and Robert are here, the one story I remember in trying to get to you guys. We sailed from Texas across Galveston Bay to Key West and then up to Fort Lauderdale. And we had loads of stuff being worked on the boat as we went. The project manager came to Key West. He fixed lots of stuff. He worked on the prop. And when we got to Fort Lauderdale, the propeller wasn't there. And we didn't know that until we pulled into the marina, or in the area, as 3 cruise ships were leaving. And they were really unhappy. It was drifting, no wind. We were there. We were in the middle of the way. We finally got a sail up. And for those of you who know the U.S., there's a thing called the Intercoastal Waterway. So we now short tack in the Intercoastal Waterway with no idea what to do. And we finally saw some wharfage and some piers with big tires on them. I thought we'll just crash into that. So we crashed into this. Robert actually almost fell between the boat and the dock.
That's a 20-foot high key as well.
Yeah. It was not meant for sailboats. So we tie up there, and within a few minutes, all of a sudden, out of central casting, Buford T. Pusser in this little, police car comes up, huge guns hanging out. A motorboat comes up with a machine gun on its deck. We have parked at a military base. And we have foreign nationals on board. They took their passports away. They interviewed everybody separately. And they were screaming at us to leave. Now, there's no wind, there's no propeller. Trying to explain to these guys why we weren't going to move. And in fact, it was probably the most painful. When we finally did get going, we got charged, I don't know if you guys remember, we got towed by Towboat US back to a marina at $300 an hour, starting from when he left his dock to when he got back. So we got clipped for $900 to go back into the marina. But in some respects, somebody looks after fools like me who don't do this very often, because had we had a propeller, we were going into the said marina. I hadn't calculated the air draft of the bridge. And had we gone into the marina, we would have lost the top 5 feet of our mast. So it was, as far as I'm concerned, the best $900 I've ever spent.
Bargain.
It was a bargain.
He did take us to the best marina in Fort Lauderdale.
Well,
That was the
it
most
was
expensive marina.
Yeah, and in fact, we were told we had to move by the marina manager because something was coming in. And Fort Lauderdale will stick in my mind is, if you don't move, we're going to cut your dock lines. It was really quite an abusive place. And then the guy that finally did come in was about 150 feet, the most god-awful looking powerboat you have ever seen. And he took it, and luckily we got somebody to kind of tow us to another slip, and we got a diver and all that kind of stuff. But I remember Fort Lauderdale. And the last story I'll tell you, we didn't, not being offshore cruisers, we're only going to do this once. We didn't carry the tankage, all this kind of stuff that you guys did. So we had jerry cans kind of judiciously placed, and right as you leave a marina, we topped up with a little bit of fuel, just a few seconds. And I have £1,000 worth of fishing tackle on this boat. Really proud of this. Fish like mad. Never caught a damn thing. As we're leaving Fort Lauderdale, and I pay for my fuel, at the till are some lures. And I buy a lure for $5. And all the fish we caught on the entire trip was on that lure. £1,000 worth of stuff that was still in the box. Most of it's still today. And that one lure caught everything we caught. I still remember that.
I still remember the look on your face when you knocked on my cabin door, and then I was covered in blood and fish guts holding a tuna.
Yeah.
Hey, look what I've caught!
Yeah.
I'm like, Greg, we don't have a shower on board. And it stunk for the next 5 days, I think, before we got into it.
Robert was a bit seasick. You learned a little bit about not doing offshore. So they're off watch. Ann and I are on watch. We caught this fish. I have no idea what it is. We didn't kill it either, could we? Oh, we couldn't. It took ages. Oh, that's the other thing. I found out with the crew. Someone had told me that you pour tequila into the gills.
Yeah.
No, it pisses them off. and so finally we bashed it with a winch handle. And but I took it in to show him. I was so excited. And he opened the door and he's looking and going, "Fish, fine." Later on, after the Azores, when we caught fish and we had this thing bouncing around, and the guy said, "What do we do? What do we do?" I go, "I know what we do." And I picked up a winch handle. I went, "Die, die, die," and splattered brains all over. And I looked up and there were 5 crew the other side of the boat, all staring at me.
Oh, God.
Wondering if they should be getting off at that time. Anyway, well, that was good.
Well, it was, yeah. We've got two stories. I'm going to ask Sue to tell one of them.
No, I can't remember.
No, you can tell your story.
Tell us about Bermuda.
I'll ask Sue to tell that story. On the leg from going out to St Lucia.
The desserts go round first.
On the way out to St Lucia, Jim Reeves, our doctor, was on board. I was on the helm, and we were doing sort of an hour and a half on, 3 hours off, I think, and sort of counting what it was. Anyway, at some point during the night, Jim shouted for me to come up on deck, so I ran up, came up on deck, and Jim says, "There's a yacht behind us." I said, "Where?" He said, "There's a light behind us." And I said, "I can't see anything." I put the radar on, not a thing in sight, nothing at all. You remember the story. And anyway, I thought our doctor was losing it. I think he was seeing things. Anyway, come daylight in the morning, we had been pooped, and both our two life belts in the back had both been washed off. And what he had seen was the life belt lighting up and everything else. Anyway, we had a much more dramatic story, which Sue's going to tell about the trip from Antigua to Bermuda.
Right. Well, I'm sure half of you have heard it already, and I'm open to correction here. After having had a dreadful storm, like backlit lightning for a couple of hours and then sizzling lightning all around while Martin was on watch, Heidi goes on watch and she says,
Heidi's our daughter,
yeah.
my daughter.
Dad, she said, "There's water in the main cabin." He goes, no, that's just normal, it comes up over, no, she said, "It's over my ankles." Sure enough, there was water, and this was up by the chart table, not just anywhere. So, anyway, the hunt goes on to find the water, which turned out to be coming through the bow, over the top, down into the boat. The four-peak lockers under the bunk were full. I mean, they were this deep full. I mean, this was just ridiculous. So Heidi's going, Dad, send a mayday, send a mayday. No, we're not sinking. So he sent.
We actually called up all.
Yeah, we called up everybody.
We were coming to call you out. But did you hear us calling you? Yeah. We never heard you reply.
No, we never heard any replies, did we? So anyway,
You did reply.
Heidi had. Well, we didn't hear it. We were too occupied.
Were you not getting a bit panicky?
Yes.
Yeah, sort of. Controlled, of course, controlled. Heidi had her head down in the forepeak and trying to, and I was just standing between the forepeak and the sink. So she was passing me buckets of water, which I was sort of, most of it going back on the floor, of course. And then I inadvertently took my hands off everything to try and throw one in. The next thing I knew, I was upside down on the floor, laid out virtually. So my story ends there because I was told to go and go to sleep. So the next thing I knew, I think Heidi carried on. And I think I woke up at sort of daylight to find we were still afloat. I was grateful to find out. We were in the Bermuda Triangle, of course. One thought stood across one's head. And so you hadn't dared, because you don't want two feeble women, you hadn't dared to go up on deck in case we couldn't get him back on. He fell over. So anyway, we crawled up, Heidi having a well-earned nap by then. We crawled up to the front to find that over the side, and Martin had a look, bits of plastic, bits of string sticking out of the anchor locker holes, the drainage holes. So, pulling a bit of plastic, and the boat suddenly went back down and the water poured out. And we carried on for another 36 hours in a very dank and wet and sloppy boat, but safe.
So how's it actually getting in? It was going in through the...
It was coming in through the anchor chain. And
I mean,
then
the
flooding.
sea was so high, it was a storm, it was just coming over the front.
Well, what was interesting,
And down through the rubber holes. I mean, somebody else said, oh, well, we've had that before. You just put tape all around, you seal the anchor locker. Wasn't something that occurred to us.
What was interesting was that we sent a notification via our satellite mobile thing to the master radio to Falmouth, and saying we are a yacht such, 3 people on board, position such and such, taking on water, not sure how serious, we'll let you know type thing. And we told them about 4 or 5 hours later that problem was solved. We happened to go back to Falmouth, and we actually went to visit this rescue centre 3-4 years later, and they were able to put up the log and show us and tell us what had happened and what they were prepared to do.
That was amazing.
Incredible, yeah.
And there we are in the middle of the Caribbean, and there's farmers all ready to sort of deploy aircraft and ships and anything else, and so on. Very, very.
Still, my favourite person was the Coast Guard in Bermuda.
The voice. Saying.
You say, I really they knew where we were.
200-mile range or something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the largest antenna in the world.
Yeah.
Uncle Lee
incredible
voice
thing.
comes in.
Yeah.
Do you remember all the warnings of, like, you know, if you look at Bermuda, there's only one small little part you can get into.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all the warnings
Yeah.
are you must carry enough food and water to get to America because, you know, if you miss it. And do you all remember when we were in Bermuda, there was a regatta that came from the U.S.
Yeah, they couldn't get home.
and they couldn't get home
They've been there for weeks.
for
haven't they?
weeks, and the crews had all left, and of course they were being shunted around from marinas because they weren't supposed to be there anymore. And they were talking at one point of hiring one of these float on, float off. They'd actually have to hire a tanker to come pick up all their boats.
God.
It was a nightmare. Yeah, they had a whole, and I don't know how many they had.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it was
a
a
big group.
Yeah, they couldn't get back. It was
Yeah.
because when we
It was
left,
every 3 days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a low every 3 days, just rolling out the
right.
States.
Well, we left early, didn't we?
We left early.
We left
We
early.
let one go through and then bang.
You left early, and we left immediately after.
Yeah, they said, yeah, you said, they're not going without us.
Oh, because we're not waiting for the next load.
Well, we were warned to go, weren't we?
I would like to comment on one occasion though, Skipper.
Go on then.
It was when I was actually going to do the Pam Pam.
Right.
Because I came aboard.
Or can-can.
I came aboard and you'd done the shopping and you forgot to get the beer.
Oh no.
Sorry about that. I'll cut that bit out.
did you keelhaul him for that?
You weren't on board when we were at the start of the leg because Jim Reeves and I went shopping. We bought this kind of packet of 12 beers. And we thought we were very cheap. We took them back and discovered they were alcoholic-free beer.
That's worse. That's worse.
We started to see all these little boats with nobody on board. And of course, it was a single-handed race, the run-up to the single-handed race across the Atlantic. And we went up to one yacht and we got very close and shouted at them, and somebody appeared and obviously just woken the poor guy up. And we bumped into, well, didn't bump into, we met about half a dozen of these yachts in that particular we met. They were doing farmers to the Azores and back to farmers, proving that they could sail single-handed.
Absolute man.
We were in Loch Harport this summer with our yacht. And Harport, of course, is one of the marina, one of the distilleries on the what used to be the Ark Distillery cruise. And there was a Frenchman there who had a helicopter thing, one of these remote control drone things. And this guy was taking pictures, and he eventually sent me copies of amazing photographs of our boat taken looking down from a drone. Actually, quite interesting, very interesting indeed. So the guy was flying this thing for half an hour. I thought he was going to go in the water, but he knew what he was doing.
I can remember. I can remember crossing the Atlantic with you, Skipper, from the Azores to Plymouth.
Yes.
And we was doing, it was something like 3 hours on and an hour and a half off, or something like that. Yeah. The other way round, was it? But I do remember when we I was asleep at the time, and it was just about to come on watch, and we were just approaching land. We hadn't seen it for 11 days. Yeah. And you shouted out, "Colin!" Right. So I thought, time to go up and watch now. So I went up top. And you was laughing your head off as you came down the stairs. And I thought, what's he laughing at? And then when I got up on top, I appreciate what you was laughing at. Because we were right in the middle of a fishing fleet. All them lights. And you said, go that way. Do you remember that, dear?
I remember calling up the fishing boat and saying, would you please put your navigation lights on?
Yeah, that's right. They wouldn't, would they? No, they had their floodlights on so they could see what they was doing. But yeah.
Big snowballs, yeah.
Do you remember that, John?
No, I was asleep at the time, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're supposed to avoid these people, but how do you?
Yeah, well, it was funny you were talking about radar, because we installed a new radar which we didn't know how to use, so we were practicing with it. But those things take a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
So we didn't turn it on very much. But when we finally got close to the UK, when we decided we have enough diesel that we could afford to, we turned it on and the guys were playing with it. And one of our guys got incredibly excited because for the first time he was able to find something on the radar. He was really excited. And we all came rushing back to look at it. He said, it's really big. There's something out there really big. We need to be careful. We need to avoid this. And he said, we're all getting kind of nervous. And then after a few seconds, what we realized, he's actually found his Land's End.
Oh, that's useful. Telling it to give way.
Well, it reminded me of a story of a yacht called Barbary Duck.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
It was a yacht that was sailing ahead of us, crossing. It was on one of the what's called the NARC, the non-arc boats. And because they rely on the safety net of the arc to come behind them. And we got a message. I mean, what started off with one message a day finished up with David running his business from our yacht via satellite, GPS. Anyway, the point was that we got this message saying that ahead of you there is a yacht. The crew had been taken off by one of our arc boats, and this boat. They think the mast's about to fall down, the chain plates are damaged, and she's not going to make it. And so the crew were taken off. And anyway, a day or two later, we got the latest position. This boat was going to be dead on our course, and we reckon we're going to hit this position about midnight.
You were the same. They said, but they've left the lights on. We have lights on. Well, very helpful.
Anyway,
thank you.
We must be quite close to each other. So anyway, come to this particular point. We thought, well, we might hit this thing.
We were the same.
Absolutely pitch dark night.
Was up to, we were exactly the same position, yeah.
Put our radar on, life jackets on, all on deck, looking for this unlit hull.
We were exactly the same.
And we obviously sailed past it. We didn't see your lights either, but we obviously passed it.
Yeah.
And that was the end of Barbary Duck, as far as we're concerned. Until we got to Antigua, Jolly Harbour, and there, sitting on the jetty, was the remains of Barbary Duck. Her mast was still standing, but she'd been stripped by all the local fishermen who'd obviously been aboard and taken everything off. We then asked somebody, said, is this normal? He said, oh, every year boats arrive here with boatloads of dead people. And of course this reminded us the story of, there were two other ark boats.
Sorry, boatloads of dead people?
Yeah, there were two ark boats ahead of us that came across a boat from Mauritania that was trying to get into the Canaries by doing a hook around into the land and coming in. They'd run out of water and they ran out of fuel. So these two yachts going past, they waved, and they rather stupidly went close to these two boats, and from this particular refugee boat climbed 3 or 4 people on board the yacht. A battle then ensued. The lady crew member locked herself in the loo and sent a message to the Spanish Coast Guard, who appeared about 3 hours later, and the other boat was keeping an eye to make sure nothing serious happened. And they contained the situation, and eventually the Spanish then took these 50 or 60 people off. They found 3 or 4 dead people in the hull. So when we got to Antigua, we were talking about this, and they said, oh yes, we get these refugee boats drifting across, 50, 60 people dead, regularly, not just occasionally, regularly, who've tried to break the rules and come into Europe the wrong way around. I mean, it's real. I mean, we got involved in refugees when we were in Turkey. All the people trying to get from Turkey to Greece and so on. And we picked up. We came down one particular bit near Leros. We picked up some blue detritus, some rucksacks in the water. We thought perhaps they were life jackets. Brought up on board. We emptied the contents out, and it was obviously a family's rucksack because there were his clothes, her clothes, baby clothes, medicine, all this stuff. We handed them into the Turkish Coast Guard, who said, thank you very much, you're very kind, but please don't do it in future. And we said, well, are you not going to pass them on to the refugees? Also, well, we just burned everything. And so from that point on, we stopped trying to collect bits and pieces from the road.
There was no idea.
There was a mobile phone in one of them.
Ruined. In the water.
It worked, the mobile phone worked. It was all in Arabic. Well, we couldn't understand what it was saying, but it was...
Martin, can I usurp the position of this chair? and just say on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for organising this.
Yes, here, here,
Christine.
It was only my idea. I contacted Martin to say it was.
And it looks like Martin's paying for it as well.
Yeah, well, he does things like that.
He's very generous.
Splendid venue, splendid food. Can I propose a toast?
A toast, excellent.
Sailing Chums present and Sailing Chums past.
Right, can I just say the total bill is 508.95 divided by 13 is £39. Can I suggest we all pay £40 per head?
Oh, that's
for
fair
the
enough,
lunch
isn't it, huh?
enjoyed here? And thank you to Sue for organising it.
Speech.
Thank you for coming.
Anyway, 40 quid a head. We pay it at the bar by credit card or
I can do it here.
All right.
Is this to become an annual event, Skipper?
I did wonder if it's a 10-year anniversary, and for us the 10 years is next June. How did we work out the maths on this?
Some of us did the complete circuit. So it's 10 years.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that one I didn't
It's
recognize.
10 years for the inner circle.
Oh, I see.
You're not in the inner circle, you're in the outer circle.
2 days after this, I'd been concerned because I've been tracking their position before I flew out. So I was a bit concerned because I knew about the reefs off Bermuda and thought they might be getting themselves into a bit of difficulty over the reef. So I meet Sue 2 days later with a huge black eye. And the first thing she says to me is, "He's been beating me up, you know."
That was the result of crossing cap.
I thought, Of course, Martin beamed as ever. I knew it couldn't be true.
Nobody else believed it. I mean, I tried to spread the rumour around.
We also, on that particular leg, blew our Jenny out. And Heidi, very kindly, before she flew back to UK in Bermuda, decided to stitch the Jenny. And she was lying or kneeling on the harbour wall, stitching away, when some very kind gentleman went past and said, "My dear, you've got a great job there. Are you sewing your wedding dress?" Never forgotten that remark. David, you must have a story. Come on. Tell us about the fish you caught.
We've been fishing the whole way.
David's our resident fisherman, I should find out.
Well, we didn't catch as many as you. Most of the fish we caught actually flew onto the boat. But anyway, we did eventually catch a barracuda. And but by that time we were in waters where you were advised not to eat the barracuda because they had some potentially horrendous disease that would affect your brain. But at the time we had a doctor on board.
Jim Reeves? Oh no,
Bill Shaw. And I remember he took out a very sharp knife. He was a surgeon. And he took the liver out of this barracuda. And he wiped it across his lips. And if his lips, if they went on fire, would sing, started singing, you know, that was basically saying they were toxic, couldn't you? So he said, it seems quite okay, you know, quite happy to eat. But actually when it came to cooking this wretched barracuda, nobody would eat it. So we had to chuck it over the side. So it was a little bit of a waste of time. During the Atlantic crossing at Martin, I mean, I've spent a lifetime at Martin, so in many ways that was one of the more tamer sort of things that we've done together. But I do there was a classic. I'm sure everybody had the same. We did have a company of a minke whales for a day, which was lovely, and it was playing with us. It was lovely, and it was exactly the same length as our boat, and you could look over and his head would look up at you, and then you could see the eye, and you're eyeing this thing. It's a real privilege, and what it would do is scoot out in front of the boat and come around, and then wait, and then come back into the boat as well. It was great fun, a great way of passing the day. But then it got fed up of our company, probably 4 hours later, and it did a magnificent broach. Wow! Splash! Did it twice. We never saw it again.
So you wore it out and Greg ran it over.
I wasn't on board at that time.
It was those sort of things I remember. And the other thing which I remember was Martin is Scottish, as you know, and he's very careful with the pennies. And everything you buy, it's non-alcoholic beer or it's economical food or whatever. And so Martin decided when we were in the Canary Islands that he'd buy a leg of ham that had been smoked. And this would last for a few days. Anyway, 7 days later, we were still trying to cut bits off this wretched thing, and he had it hanging off the mast so it to keep a little bit cool. But I knew that once the thing started sweating, that was it. We couldn't really. And I had the greatest persuasion. Martin kept saying, "No, we'll get another meal out of that." So when he was asleep, I eventually cut the wretched thing down and put it overboard. There's lots of instances like that. But it was a great time. Certainly worth doing once, but whether I go back and do it again.
Is it a bucket list thing for most people? Check it off once and then you're done?
I think so.
Oh, I'd do it again.
You would do it again? You've done it lots.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
You got any stories, John?
Well, impeding Her Majesty's nuclear submarine was delivering a yacht from Chesapeake Bay to Grand Bahama.
But on the Ark, I'm talking about.
Oh, no.
I thought you were talking about the tortoise.
The incident.
The tortoise you do around
on the Ark, no. Well, the lack of fish. We failed to catch a fish despite fishing for many days in a row. And the great excitement of seeing Pico come up out of the horizon.
Yeah.
It was a big relief to see it.
Yeah.
So that was a very memorable moment for me.
And all the Portuguese men of war in the water too.
Yes, loads of jellyfish.
But we also had the other extreme whale accompanying us. Between St Lucia and Bermuda, we had this little yellowy blue bird. Accompanied. He came onto the deck. It was tiny. It was clearly a land bird. We were miles offshore. So he stayed on. He flew off. And stayed on. Flew off. And so Heidi and I were trying to feed it. It eventually settled on one little slice of lemon, and for the whole afternoon it would come back and go away again. And then come evening, it by then had nominated itself a member of the crew. And it made studious efforts to get into the cabin, but a certain person on board kept chasing it out and didn't have it in the cabin, and it flew off through a watery grave because we didn't see it because it was far too far from shore, poor little thing. So cute. But it was sitting on, I've got a picture of it, sitting on my head, sitting on my hand. It had become so tame by the end of the afternoon. So it seemed very cruel, I must say. One of the crueler moments of the trip.
Any more stories from anybody?
Kind of the story that you always tell about the leg I wasn't there about our man from the BBC falling out of the.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
So he's a great guy, but he's quite stiff upper lip, very traditional British guest. Everything's perfect. So we were allowed to be given a couple of gallons or pints of water to finally wash as we came into the Azores. When we finally thought we might hit it and get there, because there was a big line, wasn't it? So we were outside for ages.
Yeah, funny it.
So we all go in to do our ablutions. He goes in, he gets massively soaked up before he washes it all off, and then for some reason a rogue wave from nowhere comes, it washes across, and we're all downstairs getting on with it, and this guy falls out of the toilet and he's covered in soap, naked, but he can't get up because he's so soapy, splashing around on the floor. I've never laughed so much in my life. Because he was so British, or he was so upset by it, but it was hilarious.
Colin, where were you on that day?
Well, I can report we actually met Jeremy Wyatt this summer. We're actually on our way into Auburn, We moored at the marina before we got to them. And this rather wonderful looking, not very big yacht turned up, and it was Jeremy White, the man who organised the ark.
Wasn't he going across? He was actually doing the ark, wasn't he?
Well, it was on he'd been setting up in Scotland on this boat. It's not very big, but it's quite a nice big wooden boat.
They do a malt cruise though, don't they?
They've stopped doing that. They've stopped that, yeah.
Did he invite you on board? Did he invite you on board?
We got some great pictures from the Ark because when we came at the office, our final destination was East Cowes, and Ark is in West Cowes, was at that time the West Cowes. And we called them up, as you do, and just before we got past West Cowes, they came running out to take pictures. So we had to put the Ark flag up, we put the American flag up, so we all stood there like, very professional looking kind of thing. To come in. They were quite proud of that, being able to get pictures for one of their boats coming in. It was a big deal for them, actually.
I'll give you a shook up that story, though we never crossed the Atlantic.
You would have done.
We would have done, absolutely. We only got as far as the southern coast of Ireland. And I was just with Robert Phillips, and it was the first cruise of the season from Milford Haven. We were bound with the sail, and we put into a place called Oyster Haven, a very quiet place. Being the first cruise of the season, and I don't know if any of you know, Robert, but it was usually chaos on board. No one knew where anything was except for food and drink.
Robert did.
Oh, he did. He knew where the food and drink was, yes. But anything vital usually got somewhere else. And anyway, we sailed all the way down to the various places, and then we were followed into Oyster Haven by an Irish Navy cutter, and it was kind of taking a bit of interest in this, and why on earth, and we anchored in Oyster Haven, followed by a cutter, and followed by a black rib making its way to us, you see. And I had a twinge of concern. I said, Robert, we haven't got any flags up. He said, oh yeah, that's somewhere around, I put them through the wash, and they'll be down in some bag, And I said, okay, well, I'll, Rib comes alongside, a very attractive young woman lieutenant gets on board and wants to know where we're from, who we are. He says, you haven't got any flags flying, so you wonder who you are. And we said, yes, just hold on a minute. We know where they are. We just had time, 6 days. So Robert produced a Sainsbury's bag from the villages of the and he said, here we are, got more land. And in front of the two, the young woman and another Irish naval officer, everyone emptied the contents onto the saloon table, which were his wife Diana's underwear. They did. We weren't arrested. On any account.
I can tell you, flying the American flag, we get boarded on a regular basis. And the first time we left Europe to get away from DAT, we went to the Channel Islands and we went to St. Malo, myself and one other bloke on that club. And we got boarded in France. And 4 people in, gendarmes, the black outfits, the guns, and one very small chap who was designed to go into small places. And they took us to separate places. They interviewed us. They started going through bags. It became very serious. And I'm thinking, I don't really know the bloke I'm with that much. So if he's got drugs or anything, then I could lose the boat. And they're going through everything very serious. And I'm trying to chat him up. Would you like coffee? Anything, nothing. And finally, they get to our security, our safety locker, and we had done the usual duty-free shopping, and we had been trying to figure out where to store bottles so they don't break. And so he opens the locker, and it says flares and safety, and he looks in, and it's full of alcohol. and I forgot about that, and he looks and he said, "This is your safety locker?" And I'm at the front, well, yes, sir, it's all in date, I've got all the paperwork. And he reaches down, and he picks up a flare kit in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, and he looks at us, and he'd been totally serious the whole time. he looks at this and he smiles and says, "This is a very French safety locker." And immediately the mood changed. They were all excited and they left. And I've never been so relieved in the bucket.
Lewis out the corridor. Have you any other stories at the park? Well, I think art-related stories. No, I mean, obviously our choral concert in
Let's gloss over
that's
that.
been recorded by choral.
Gloss over the choral concert.
There was, in fact, a charity on South Sea, Hayling Island, that side, that did the same, but I'm not sure what happened to that. But there was a great need, not only for buildings, old skilled craftsmen, but also, preparing a boat. It'd be a wonderful way to get people who aren't otherwise employed concentrating on something worth doing. They can use the end results all the better. But I'm glad Number One Boathouse is up and running and doing that thing.
Yeah, it's great.
And the whole thing is coming together much more. I expect you've all seen the Mary Rose Museum by now, but it's a tour de force, at least I think so.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah. I say so because I chose the architects.
I wasn't the architect.
Yeah, right.
It's not so sort of mystical as well as being permanently
So
sprayed.
you'll go meet Blaine, then I
But it's just different.
I've just added another story to what you've just said, about unusual sailors, in that we met McLean, the guy, he's the guy who was in the parachute regiment who rode the Atlantic.
Oh yes, yes.
And he did all that, and then someone said, "We haven't sailed the Atlantic." So he sailed the Atlantic in a boat that was 6 feet long. And he got the record for sailing the Atlantic in the smallest boat. And then somebody sailed in a boat 5'11". This guy lives up in Mora, on Loch Nevis. And we met him this summer. So he said, sod it. So he got a power saw. There's a picture of him cutting off 6 inches of the back of the boat, which he then stuck on again. And sailed the Atlantic again, boat 5'8" long. And he crossed the Atlantic. I mean, it's not the world's greatest sailor in Orsted, but he crossed the boat.
Is there any undercover bit?
It was all undercover. He basically, it's like basically a torpedo. He's inside, a big lump, and he's inside it, water, food, and the rest of it. Took him about 7 weeks to cross.
Does he go unsupported?
Yeah, he went unsupported.
7 weeks. I think it was 7 foot wide, 6 foot long.
I mean, the guys, he's the guy also who went to on Rockall, spent 4 weeks on Rockall, proving it was a British territory. He built a porta cabin, a miniature porta cabin. He lived in this thing for 4 weeks to
There's
prove
no
it.
flat surface there, is there, on Rockall?
Rockall's
Had to be lashed on.
And then there's a flat bit where you can just get a
stance.
of a shed, which he nailed on and lived in this thing for 4 weeks.
Steel horses and all sorts
Mad
of
dogs and Englishmen coming by.
So there are some lunatics around. We're not the only ones. Amazing what people will do. Very much. Anyway, yes, good plan. Kept you in business enough.
Right, indeed, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There's a little crate attached to the frame.
It will tell us, yes.
You can see it.
Oh, in Asia.
Hold on, she's taking a photo, is she?
Take a couple to make sure they come out
Once
well.
you're ready, sir.